My name is Deborah Hodges, and I am the program manager with the Institute of Medicine of Chicago. I've been with IOMC since 2019, and I have the wonderful privilege here of working with everyone on this particular mentoring and networking program that we have for students. So tonight's program itself is titled Building Your Superpowers. And we are very fortunate to have Brian Willis with us with excellent credentials who can talk to the students in regards to this. We are taping this program. So if the students miss the program, it's going to be available on the website and to them in order to look at later on. So thank you so much for being here. So let's go forward. And to introduce myself, I want to introduce, you can't do these things on your own. So I just want to recognize my associates who help us with this overall program. And one is Jeff Kramer. Jeff, you want to raise your hand in the background there? He's a very experienced person and is my right arm in many ways on this program and others. And we also have joining us with us is Jada Ward, who has a master's in public health. She recently graduated from DePaul. So Jada, give a wave to everyone. She's our social media face and our program assistant on this program overall. So again, can't do it without them. Let me tell you just a little bit about the Institute of Medicine of Chicago. It's an independent nonprofit organization of distinguished leaders in the health field who collaborate to improve the health of the public. We specifically draw upon the expertise of diverse members and other regional leaders in the state of Illinois, and it addresses critical health issues through a range of interdisciplinary approaches, including education, research, communication, building community and community engagement. And at the very core of its mission and actions is building programs and services to better meet the needs of its members and the Chicago and state of Illinois community. We have the good fortune of this program being funded by the Ortho Sprague Memorial Institute. And I believe that Mr. Alexander is on this video, this session tonight. So I wish to thank him again for his efforts in helping us produce this 2-year program. Let me just tell you a little bit about that if this is the first time that you're joining one of these sessions. It's a 2-year mentoring program dedicated to men, Black and Latino medical and dental students who are currently enrolled. We currently have 26 students who are enrolled from 4 medical and dental schools in the Chicago area. We also have over 50 medical and dental students who are in the process of signing up for the program overall. So we're very thrilled about that. The University of Illinois Medical and Dental School is involved. Rush University and Chicago Medical School are the schools that are currently involved in the program, but it's open to all 9 schools in the Chicago area. So if you know of anyone who would be interested, any student who would be interested in this particular demographic, please contact us. We'll be glad to send them information or provide them with the information so that they can sign up officially. The sign-up form is very simple. It's just it'll take them about 2 minutes to fill out. So it's not like a living will or testament where it'll take a long time. What we intend to do is to provide virtual sessions over the next 2 years, approximately 4 to 5 per year, and then also conduct a half-day convening with multiple speakers once per year. Plus, all the students are invited as a guest to IOMC's virtual and in-person events of no cost to them at all. The idea here is to help them build a professional network with other professionals in their area that they're interested in. And I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the other events that we have coming up. We just launched our LinkedIn page last week, thanks to Jada's efforts. So I appreciate that very much. So if you have not signed up, I put the link for the LinkedIn page in the chat box. If you have not signed up on that page yet, please do so. We want to make sure that we get to as many people as we can. And it not only the students, but others who'd be interested in interacting with students as well. So we intend to have polls and a discussion group that'll be interactive, every day, and to keep things moving forward for the students. We'll be launching our e-newsletter next week for the students. That'll have a resources page, articles, videos, association lists, everything that we think that would be helpful to them as their students, but not only that, building their new careers. So I can look forward to that information coming very soon. I wanted to point out a particular program that I think would be of interest to the students overall, and it's especially important because of its subject matter. The subject matter is childhood lead poisoning in the Chicago area. There is research studies, primary studies on elevated hotspots in the Chicago area in soil. This will relate back to some elevated blood levels in children. And of course, it also relates to climate issues, which are very much in today's news. So we have 4 excellent speakers who are going to be talking about that on September 23rd. And the students are invited, to attend the virtual event. And once again, if they're not able to attend, because it is held at noon on Friday, a video will be made available on our website for them to look at that further. So that gives you a little bit of a rundown of where we're at right now. I also wanted to mention to you that we're going to be hosting a half-day program, a convening in October, and it will cover various topic areas. That'll include having a panel of residents talk about their experiences and how they successfully made it through their studies and schedules and family obligations and so on. We're going to have a speaker on debt literacy, because I know many of the students have brought out in the last session that we had that financial obligations weigh heavily on them and create stress. So, and we've all been through that, but it is very doable. So we'll have some professionals talk with you about that. Other career options. There will be fellows at the event itself and other industry professionals, so you can meet up with them and find some a mentor or just a contact in order for someone for you to be able to talk to in the future. So today's event itself, the session, here's how we're going to go about it. We're going to have Mr. Willis, Brian Willis, share his presentation with us and his insights. We'll then open it up for an open discussion. Because it is a small group, we're not going to break out into more than one breakout. We'll stay together as a whole group. When that happens, and I'll remind you of this, we'll have each person share their name, their school or organization that they're affiliated with, and their area of interest in medicine or dentistry. And then we'll pose 2 questions to you to begin the dialogue and discussion so that people can share their experiences and talk about what's useful and helpful to them in order to apply what you learned today, but then also to talk about what's important to you overall. So I'm going to, here's the focus of today's presentation overall. It's on managing stress, and Brian is going to cover all of these areas in full. So we're very glad to have him with us this evening. So Brian, I'm going to turn this over to you now in order to begin the presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Deborah. Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Brian K. Willis, Jr. I am currently a school social worker in Indian Prairie School District 204. I have a lot of experience. I've worked as a crisis therapist. I've worked as a school social worker. I've also worked as a K-12 administrator, as an assistant principal, and I've also have done some private practice as a licensed clinical social worker. So the next page, gratitude. I want to start here with gratitude. I really want to make sure everybody understand that the more gratitude you show, the more enjoyable your life is. So I want to show gratitude and thanks to the Institute of Medicine of Chicago for giving me this opportunity to serve in this capacity. I also want to thank the participants for taking this stance and also this leap of faith in your studies and making sure that you are in a situation where you are persevering and trying to give back to your community. So overall, I just want to tell everyone, thank you for this opportunity. So once again, my introduction. My name is Brian K. Willis, Jr. I like to start here with all this information. And the reason why I do it like this is because I've been through a lot of presentations where you meet the presenter and all they want to do is talk about, all the great things they've done, But I like to start where I'm from. because where I'm from is very important to me, because when I go anywhere, I want to make sure people know where I'm from, and maybe we have some type of connection. Maybe they understand that, hey, that city is a great city to be from. So that's why I always start from saying I'm from Peoria, Illinois. I'm really proud of being from Peoria, Illinois. While in Peoria, I went to two different high schools. I went to Peoria Central High School, and then I also went to Peoria Richwoods High School, where I graduated from. And I say it like that because I only went to Richwoods High School for one semester. So I'm really a Peoria Central Lion, but I graduated as a Peoria Richwoods Knight. So after I graduated high school, I went to Illinois State University, where I got a bachelor's degree in social work. Also at that time at Illinois State University, I joined the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. From there, I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where I obtained my master's degree in social work with a concentration in schools. And I also got the professional educator license as a school social worker from pre-K to transition, which is 22 days before a student's, one day before a student's 21st birthday. So I'm very vast in that. So after a couple of years of my career as a school social worker, I decided to go back to school, and I went to the Governor State University in University Park, where I obtained a master's degree in educational leadership, and then I have another professional educator license for principal leadership. And on top of all of that, I then also went and got a licensed clinical social work credential, which allows me to be in private practice and providing therapy to adolescents and adults. So today's presentation is all about building your superpowers. And the first thing we want to focus on is stress. Stress is a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension. Stress can be good or bad. Good stress helps us go about our daily tasks and achieve those hard to reach goals. This stress helps us learn new things, adapt to change, and engage in critical thinking. Everyone experiences good stress on a daily basis. Another form of good stress is the stress that enables us to survive in times of trauma. This stress makes us aware of danger and enables us to escape when we need to. Some bad stress. Bad forms of stress do not help us achieve goals or tasks, but instead actually inhibit our ability to function on a daily basis. Bad stress occurs when too much stress builds up around us. Once the body feels there is too much stress, the body will begin to break down, causing symptoms like anxiety, headaches, and rapid breathing. This kind of stress can take a huge toll on your physical and mental well-being. The question I wanted to ask the participants is, do you recognize your stress? A lot of times, because some good stress happens all the time, we don't always recognize when we are stressed out. Sometimes I recognize within myself when I'm stressed out, when I know I'm not eating well. That's like my big thing. If I'm stressed out and I start overeating and not eating healthy things, that's when I'm consciously telling myself, Brian, you're stressed out. And when you guys are in medical school, I work at a middle school, I'm sorry. When you're in medical school, sometimes you're so used to all the stress going on, and it's like the nature of the beast, so to say, that you sometimes can't recognize some of those stressors that start to turn into bad stressors. So I always want to ask the question of, do you recognize your stress? Because when you recognize your stress, we have to do something to address the stress. And we address the stress by utilizing coping skills. Cope is to deal with successfully. Coping of a person, deal effectively with something difficult. Coping skills is really anything that you are doing to address the stress, whether consciously or unconsciously. You can have healthy coping skills or unhealthy coping skills. Unhealthy coping strategies tend to feel good in a moment, but have long-term negative consequences. Healthy coping strategies may not provide instant gratification, but they lead to long-lasting positive outcomes. I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples of unhealthy coping strategies. Some of those are drug and alcohol use, overeating, which is my unhealthy coping skill, procrastination, sleeping too much or sleeping too little, when you are socially withdrawal, where you don't want to hang out with your friends, you don't want to contact your family members, and aggression. Some examples of healthy coping strategies is exercise, talking about your problem, healthy eating, seeking professional help, doing relaxation techniques, and also using your social support, which is your family and friends, and also problem-solving techniques. It is very important for us to focus on utilizing positive coping skills. So here I have a list of coping skills, and I'm going to read all of these lists out. And I want you to understand that these coping skills is anything that you're doing to address your stress. And in this situation, we're focusing on mainly the positive coping skills. And after I read all these coping skills, I'm going to teach one coping skill to you that you can utilize on a daily basis. So some of the coping skills that we have here is taking deep breaths, going for a walk, listening to music, working out, writing your thoughts down on paper, also known as journaling, doing some yoga, some meditation, watching a good movie, think about someone you love, do some art, list 10 positive things about yourself, count to 100, organize, talk with a friend or family member, ask for help, positive self-talk, write a story, complete an old enjoyable hobby. And what I mean by that is something that maybe you enjoyed to do when you were in high school, and take pictures. So all of these, you can find it on the internet everywhere, that there's millions and millions of coping skills that you can do. The key thing is making sure that you address your stress with some coping skills. So one coping skill that I wanted to teach the group is a breathing technique. And this breathing technique is called 4-square breathing. And 4-square breathing is, it's called 4-square breathing because you're doing it in a square. So you take a deep breath for 4 seconds, you hold that deep breath for 4 seconds, you release it for 4 seconds, and then you pause for 4 seconds, and then you do it all over. And you do that same process 4 times. So I'm going to walk this group through doing this coping skill, okay? So the first step is to inhale for 4 seconds. So on 3, we're going to inhale on 4 seconds, okay? 1, 2, 3, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold that breath for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to pause for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that one more time. On 3, we're going to inhale, and that's going to take 4 seconds. We're going to pause and hold that breath for 4 seconds. We're going to release that breath, and then we're going to wait 4 seconds. So on 3, 1, 2, 3. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to pause for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is called 4-square breathing because you're doing it in a square and you're doing it 4 times. So that's why it's called 4-square breathing. Now, the reason why I teach this coping skill to a lot of individuals I meet in my practice, in my professional life and personal life, is that it's something that you can do without anybody knowing that you're actually doing. You don't have to shout anything out loud. You don't have to get up and move around. You literally are just controlling your breathing and thinking in your mind about that 4-square breathing. And this really helps you calm your body and deal with that stress that you may be encountering. Now, this is my professional top 3 coping skills. And they are very, very simple. It is sleep, sleep, sleep. As medical students, I understand that you're always on the go. You always have to be studying. You always have to be on your P's and Q's. But if you're like an iPhone 13 and you have good battery life, eventually your battery is going to die, okay? And with that being said, your body is like that iPhone 13, where although you can work hard and you do great things throughout the day, it's always important to shut that down and get recharged. And as human beings, how we recharge ourselves is through sleep. We have to be sleeping. My recommendation is to sleep at least 5 hours of consistent sleep, but we should be working towards 8 to 10 hours of consistent sleep and always keeping yourself on a routine. And I understand that sometimes things come up and sometimes you have to stay up all night to get something done. Sometimes you have to wake up early to get things done. But the number one thing that individuals do not do enough of is sleeping. And when you get a good night's sleep, it just sets up the rest of the day for you to be successful. The next coping skill is a healthy diet. As medical students, this is very simple. You guys know this information, but a lot of people know this information, but we still don't do it. And that's why I'm bringing it up. And these are why it's my top 3 coping skills to practice is a healthy diet. And what that means is making sure you're getting your vegetables, your fruits, your water, and your protein. If you focus on those, you'll be eating healthy and not eating junk food and fast food. And I understand that sometimes those things come up, but that healthy diet in conjunction with the sleep is one of my second favorite coping skills. And the third is exercise. We all know this, but yet it's very difficult for us to do it. And when I say exercise, I'm not talking about that you have to be Sean T. I don't know if anybody knows who Sean T is. He's a famous workout instructor from beachbody.com. He's very in shape. He's always making you do things. He has a program called Insanity. I'm not telling you to be Sean T. What I'm simply telling you to do is move your body at least 30 minutes every day. That can be simply getting up and walking around. That can be doing yoga, stretching, doing some push-ups, something to get your heart rate up and doing it on a consistent basis. So out of all the coping skills that I shared, these 3 are my top 3 to go to because it's something that we have to do every single day that would then address our stress and keep our stress levels at a baseline minimum. And then when we have more stress, we can then go to these other coping skills that I identified to help you out. Resiliency. Resiliency is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. Resiliency is also called grit, perseverance, growth mindset. For you to be in medical school right now, you have practiced resilience. You had to make sure that things were put in order. You took every necessary step to keep on going and going. You had people in your corner. You had people that were doubters. You had people telling you you will never get into medical school. And you said, no, I'm going to continue to focus on my goal and practice resiliency to get to my goal. And now you're kind of in a situation where you made it to the medical school part, but it's like that's when the hard work actually begins, right? So you thought that you did all these different things to get to the point that you're at now. And now it's like, oh my goodness, I have a lot more to go. And this is that time where we really have to practice that resiliency and remember why we got into the field and remember why we wanted to be medical doctors. Because when you are up at 11 o'clock at night with this test due tomorrow, and you haven't slept well because you didn't focus on my 3 coping skills, my 3 top favorite coping skills, it becomes kind of like you have doubt. You start self-doubting yourself. You start thinking that things are not going to work out the way that you want to work out. So my big thing is making sure that you understand that you have already practiced resiliency and you have to keep on going and keep on persevering, keep on showing that grit and having that growth mindset that although maybe things are not all the way going the way that you want it to go, that you always can make sure that you are staying focused on your goal. So I want to go back to this page. And the reason why I go back to this one is that I'm Brian K. Willis Jr., but I'm going to share with you guys my resiliency story, okay? So I told you that I went to Peoria Central High School and then I graduated from Richwood High School. But before that, I went to 2 different high schools. I went to a high school in Texas called North Richland Hills High School. And then also I went to a school called Birdsville High School. And at that time, I was living with my biological father down in Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And unbeknownst to me, I did not know this. I was about 13 going into 14. I had 1 year to spend with my father and he actually passed away from an aneurysm. And from that point, when I was 14 years old, I had to make a decision in my life that am I going to continue to move forward or am I going to let this situation keep me down and start making bad choices? That was my first stage of resiliency. And then when I went to Illinois State University, I didn't even want to go to Illinois State University. At that time, I was a wrestler and I was a football player, and we all have these great hopes that I'm going to go D1. I'm going to go to the University of Illinois and play football. I'm going to go wrestle. That wasn't in my plan. And what happened was my mom forced me to apply to Illinois State University. Luckily, I got in the first time, which was awesome. And then I started my journey in college. Now, in my journey in college, I'm a first generation college student. I have 4 siblings ahead of me that did not finish high school. And then I have 4 siblings behind me. So my job was to make that positive example to my younger sibling. So while at Illinois State University, I had all these different things come up. I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to work a lot. I had to get an RA job, a resident assistant job. I worked so many different jobs when I was in college. It was a lot. And then also, I had to keep up with my grades. And as I was applying to become into the program, my GPA wasn't the best, but it was just enough to get in. And then from there, when I was about to graduate, it was my senior year of college, I got a notification that I wasn't going to graduate because one of my grades for French, second year French, I passed the class, but I didn't pass it with a B or higher. I had a D, and I had to talk with the college dean to give me an exemption to make it to graduation. And then once I got to graduation, my senior year, I decided to say, hey, I want to join Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. The year prior, though, I tried to join and it was too late. And I could have easily said, hey, that is not in my cards. I'm just going to give up. But I persevered. And the next year, then I decided to join that organization. And then going to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Once again, I was so nervous about going to school and I didn't really quite know what to do at school as a social worker with a bachelor's degree in social work. And everybody told me in order to make some type of living with social work, you have to get this master's degree. So what did I do? I applied to only one school, and that was University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Luckily, I got into that university and I was able to then pursue my degree and master's degree in social work. Now, I'm identified here in my introduction that I have a professional educator license and my concentration is school social work. But you all don't know the background with that. I have to persevere and show resiliency with that. In the state of Illinois, in order to get a professional educator license, you have to pass two different tests. At the time, you had to pass what was called a basic skills test, and then you have to pass a content test. And unfortunately, my basic skills test, I was not able to pass it. I actually took the test 5 times and still could not pass the test. And that last time, the 6th time, is when I actually passed the test. The content test was really easy. I got through that, but that basic skill test really held me back. And actually, it holds so many people back that the state of Illinois actually took that test away for educators so then they can just pass that content test and go into the field. And at that time, this was back in 2011, 2012, that wasn't the case. You had to pass pass the test in order to get your license. And if I would have just gave up on myself at the 3rd, the 4th time, I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you all. So then as I go to Governor State University after being in my career for a couple of years, once again, I only applied to one school. I got in, that was awesome. And then with the professional educator license, this time I actually passed the test the first time. I didn't have to retake it. I understood that I need to study and take the test how they wanted me to take it. And that was really good. But I'm going to go back to this degree. I then, after a couple of years as a school social worker, the past 2 years, I actually was an assistant principal. And I was an assistant principal at a junior high school. And in my time there, a lot of different things happened in my life where I had 2 children back to back. I had one in 2019, and then I actually had a 2020 baby, and he's an actual COVID baby. So I had all that going on. My wife is also an administrator at a high school, so we had no time to do anything. And I actually had to step away from that role to focus on my family. And at that time, I felt like a failure. I really did. But and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? And luckily this summer, I was able to then get back into the field of school social work. And I got a job with the Indian Prairie School District 204. And so far, I've only been there for about a month, and it's one of the best decisions I've made thus far in my career. Going back to my license in clinical social work, in the state of Illinois, there are 2 different licensure levels for social workers. One level is a licensed social worker, and the next level is a licensed clinical social worker. So when I got out of college, I decided to take the LSW test, because for the LSW test, you only have to have a master's degree in social work just to walk in and take the test. Do you think I passed that test? No, I did not pass the test the first time. So then I said, instead of trying to take the LSW test again, I said, okay, I would do all my clinical hours, which were 3,500 clinical hours that I had to meet with a licensed clinical social worker. I'm just going to take a licensed clinical social work test. Do you think I passed that test the first time? No, I did not. So then I had to practice, 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 and study, study, study. And then I took that test. And if I didn't show that perseverance and that resiliency, I wouldn't be able to call myself a licensed clinical social worker. I wouldn't have been able to go into private practice. And honestly, this situation right now, I wouldn't be here because this whole situation started with me having that licensed clinical social work credential. So I wanted to give you guys my true story about how I got to where I'm at and showing you how resiliency is the key to success. Satisfaction and defined expectation. Satisfaction, fulfillment of one's wishes, expectations, or needs, or the pleasure derived from this. And then I also added here delayed satisfaction or delayed gratification. All the participants in this mentoring program is under the guidance of delayed gratification. You have been working really, really hard to get to where you're at right now, but yet there's still more to go. And you always have to keep that end in mind because you have so many more things to learn, so many more things to do. And honestly, it would be easy for you to just give up right now. I want you to understand that you waiting on that delayed gratification is going to be the key to your success. And I know that sometimes you get down. I know that sometimes it don't seem like it's worth it. I know that you still have people in your family and friends set that they're like, man, you might as well just quit. You know, you're not doing well. You might as well go ahead and just give this up. And I want you to understand that the delayed gratification is going to help you understand that this was worth it. So delayed gratification or deferred gratification is the resistance to the temptation of the immediate pleasure, which in your situation, the immediate pleasure will be, this is too hard, I'm done with this, I can go do something else, and I can go get some money, and I'll be A-okay. So delaying that temptation for that immediate pleasure in the hope of obtaining a valuable and long-lasting reward in the long term. And you always have to remember to keep the end in mind. Before you started in medical school, you had a thought, you had an idea to do something. You always got to keep that as your why. Why did you apply to be in a medical school? Why did you choose the different type of steps that you chose to get to where you're at? Why do you want to be a medical doctor? These are the things that you have to understand for yourself. I can't do that for you. You have to understand that for yourself on why you are doing what you're doing. And when things get hard, you have to go back to your why. So satisfaction and defined expectations. With expectations, I wrote this in a little different way. I took it in a different mindset when I read it. And I wanted you to understand that you have to expect to practice resiliency. You have practices already, but it's still more to go. And even after you become medical doctors and you're doing great, guess what? Life is going to throw you some curveballs. And you have to continue to expect to practice resiliency. You have to expect to be uncomfortable. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm very uncomfortable right now. Even though we're on the screen and I'm giving this presentation on the screen, I'm very uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable with talking with adolescents. I'm very comfortable with talking with parents about their adolescents. I've even very comfortable with talking individually with individuals, talking about some serious situations. But when it comes to this type of format, I'm uncomfortable right now. So you have to expect to be uncomfortable. The other thing, you need to expect to have stress. You always have to remember that stress is what causes a coal to become a diamond. In order for that coal to become a diamond, it is under extreme stress. And for you right now, you may be under a lot of extreme stress. And I want you to make sure that you expect to have the stress, but then also expect to address the stress with the coping skills that we identified. One thing that I want you also to do is to expect the worst case scenario. And that can sound a little negative, right? But it's not. The reason why I say expect the worst case scenario is because when we go into any situation, we always think about the best case scenario. For example, if you're about to go buy that new car and they have a discount of 50%, you're like, wow, I only have to have this type of money and I'm be able to get this car. But then we never think about how once you walk into that dealership, how that 50% only applied to certain people, and now you have to pay 100%. So you don't think about that, and then before you know it, you're in a bad situation. So I always tell people to expect the worst case scenario so that if it comes to pass, you are better prepared to handle the situation. Also, expect to look forward to delayed satisfaction or delayed gratification. You are in this for the long run. Make sure that you understand that. Expect that to happen. And then the next thing is I want you to expect to be great. You got here somehow, some way. You showed your grit. You showed your resiliency thus far. So I need you to expect that you're going to be great one day. And then also, I want you to expect that your dream will become your reality. You had a dream and a thought to get to medical school, and you have a dream and thought to be in whatever specialty that you want to be in. And you always have to go back to that why and expect that that dream will become your reality. With our expectations, one key thing that we must do is write our expectations down. This can be called journaling. It can be called your SMART goals. Everybody calls it something. I like to say, write it down. Whatever you think your why is, write it down. Whatever you think your goal is, write it down. Whatever you think your dream is, write it down. And then also think about that worst case scenario that we talked about in the last slide and write down your expectations on addressing that worst case scenario if it was to come to pass. They say that you only rise up to your practice. If you never practice what you might do in a situation, you're going to end up doing nothing. So if you're always thinking about that worst case scenario and you're preparing yourself for that worst case scenario, if it was to come to pass, which I hope that it doesn't, but if it does, you are able to address it appropriately. And once again, I want you to create that plan and stick to the plan. Now, I can't sit here and tell you what your plan should look like because every plan is different and everybody is different. But what I can tell you is whatever your plan is, you need to write those things down. And I would strongly encourage you to write it down every single day because then it becomes something that's always in your mind every day of the day. And then that leads us to consistency. Consistency is the key to your success so far. And you've been consistent in doing the necessary steps to get into medical school. I want you to stay consistent because your future depends on your consistency. I want you to stay consistent in recognizing your stress. I want you to stay consistent in addressing your stress with healthy coping skills. I want you to stay consistent with shaking things off and practicing resiliency. I want you to stay consistent with having a plan and staying with your plan. I want you to stay consistent with understanding all you are doing is preparing you for the satisfaction in the future. And once you get to that satisfaction, I charge everyone in this mentoring program to then go back to your community. I talked about my community, which is Peoria, Illinois. I want you to go back to your community and then help someone else to help them build their superpowers. So I'm going to leave this with you, my last thought, that if you got nothing from this presentation, I want you to remember this. The key to your success is consistency, and consistency is the key. And like we started with gratitude, and I want to end with gratitude also. I am very appreciative and humbled to have this opportunity to speak to you all. I really thank Ms. Deborah for reaching out to me, and I want to thank the Institute of Medicine of Chicago for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you all. And I want to show my gratitude to you all for giving me this opportunity. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Brian, very much. That was very, very helpful. So talk about a little bit of stress. We had 10 students who signed up for this session for tonight. So I get to practice coping skills because there's no students on this program, but thankfully it's being videotaped, so we'll share them with them. But let's go through the exercise anyway among ourselves, because I think it can be very helpful. And also when the students see the video itself, they'll be able to hear, maybe your experience or what's taking place. So we'll go through that direction. And Jada, since you are a recent grad from DePaul in studies for your graduate degree, I'm going to ask you if you would, share your name, your school, your area of study, and why you chose, to get a master's in public health. And then we'll just go around with the participants that we have, and then we'll entertain the 2 questions that Brian has, is going to propose to us, and talk a little bit more about stress. So Jada, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jada. As you may have heard, I am a recent graduate of the Master's of Public Health program at DePaul University. So my area of focus was social epidemiology, which is looking at the social determinants of health and the societal factors that lead to epidemics. and lead to the continuation of epidemics. I actually chose to get my master's of public health kind of on a whim. During my undergraduate career, I actually majored in creative writing, but I had a minor in public health. But the more classes that I took in it, the farther along the line I got, I was like, oh, I feel like I could use my skills in creative writing in public health, because I think that there's kind of a power to making informed decisions about your life and about your health. And you cannot do that if the information that is given to you is something that is inaccessible to you, either by language or by the type of syntax or jargon that they use, or an area of my focus was kind of on disability, that if you are somebody who does not do well with a visual format and you do kind of well with more of an oral format, if it's not given to you in that form, if you're somebody that has difficulty hearing and things are said to you and you would prefer a visual format, little things like that.
All right, thanks, Jada. Appreciate that. Okay, Kathy Fausler.
Hi, yes, I'm Kathy Fulcher. I'm obviously not in medical school. I don't know if they let people with gray hair into medical school. And I wanted to say, Brian, thank you very much for your presentation. Really compelling. And boy, talk about grit and determination. Hats off to you. Really, really an impressive story about your resilience. So yeah, thank you for that. So Deborah, I'm not sure what you want me to share. I just tell you a little about myself, or
Yes, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I actually work at the Midwest Business Group on Health. We're a regional nonprofit coalition. We support, our members are businesses that are typically self-funded, meaning they hold the risk for the insurance plans that they provide to their employees. And so there's a whole set of issues that go along with that in terms of optimizing their benefits. And I know this sounds really far afield from stress management and resiliency, but we're very education focused. So we do monthly educational programs for our employers, which are primarily the benefits leadership in the organizations. And mental health is a huge issue. I mean, it's been brewing. It's been an issue for a long time, but especially with COVID, you probably all know there's just been a huge spike in mental health issues and crises for individuals. And, you know, people take their personal selves to the workplace. So our employers have to know how to help their employees deal with mental health issues, whether it's by implementing programs, you know, beefing up their EAP, letting their employees know what kind of resources are available, having on-site programs and classes, that kind of thing. And there are also legal requirements now that I won't go into that because you don't need to know all that. But so my organization, MBGH, does a monthly or an annual, we do monthly educational programs for our members in downtown Chicago. Every year, one of our programs is on mental health. And so I like to just kind of get my feelers out into the world to see, because, you know, we can kind of get cloistered if we're not careful. And I just want to see what's going on out there in the world. What are people saying to various populations about mental health and stress management and resiliency, and how to manage your life in a difficult time, because it can always be a difficult time. And especially now, it's a difficult time. So that's kind of me.
Okay, good. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate you sharing. And yes, Brian certainly persevered, you know, tremendously, a lot of, you know, pushing through. And I'm sure many of the medical and dental students, they're going to have some of those barriers or obstacles as well to do the same. Jeff, why don't I go to you? You're on mute. There you go.
I got it. Okay. I was thinking about this, and I think what I like to do is relate one experience that had great impact on my life. And when I was in the Navy, I did a 2-year tour on board the aircraft carrier Nimitz. And going to sea in the Navy, you know, it's obviously not a princess cruise. It's a different lifestyle. You get out there, you work, you eat, maybe you watch. Back then we had closed circuit TV, but this was before the internet and everything. So we had the evening movie, which was on the, you know, a 35 millimeter version. of some first run movies and stuff, and that was good. But when you were through with work, there was no place to go. You couldn't go home because you were out in the middle of the ocean. And we had this experience was compounded by the fact I was on the ship from 1979 to 81. I would say we weren't at sea all the time, but a lot of times we were. We were in the Mediterranean in October 79 when they took the hostages in Iran. And we got sent from Naples, Italy, around the Cape of Good Hope into the Indian Ocean, where we spent 145 days without a port call. So in addition to the normal challenges of sea duty and sea life, we had this where, you know, we didn't see land for months. And, you know, mail was 8 days one way. And, you know, I found myself every so often, I just had to walk away to a part of the ship, like the stern. You could just watch the propellers turning up the water or something, just to get away for a while, because the movies didn't always do it. And or even going to your, I was an officer, so I had a stateroom, which was, you know, provided some privacy and isolation. But it was an interesting experience. It's a real growth experience, and not just mine, but I think everybody that goes to sea, whether it's on a carrier, destroyer, or submarine, is even more stressful. So it's learning how to develop a new lifestyle. Of course, I had to readapt when I got off and went to a naval hospital because people didn't work around the clock there. Well, they did, but you worked a shift basically, and you more normal life. So it took a little bit of adjustment, but you know, it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it. I'll never do it again.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you sharing that. Dr. Watson Lowry, how about yourself? Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Cheryl Watson Lowry. I am on the IOMC Program Advisory Board, and I'm a dentist. I went to the University of Illinois for dental school and for undergrad. So I can really understand the stress that the students go through. The things I know are a lot different at the university now, but there is definitely and indeed a lot of stress in finding ways to manage that. Each student is different. You know, I know that I used, like Brian mentioned earlier, some of I liked art when I was growing up, so I would kind of, you know, focus on some of those things to relieve some of my stress, do some art projects and different things, exercise, go for a walk, different things to relieve some of my stress. So I definitely understand some of the situations that the students are involved in, and you have to be determined. You have to, you know, keep your focus on what your goal is so that you can get to the end, and you will, you will. So this was a very interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to attending some other ones.
So thank you so much for sharing. Dr. Stewart.
Hi, I'm Anita Stewart. I too went to the University of Illinois College of Medicine, and I too have a master's in public health from the University of Illinois and a law degree from DePaul. So you can see that after you get accustomed to managing stress, it doesn't bother you to continue on. So that's one of the things I want to point out, that we all learn how to manage stress, and we do it in a variety of ways, whether it's exercise, being with your friends. Another thing that I always found helpful was always the constant visualization of the goal that I wanted to obtain. So as long as I knew that I did the very best I could, and I always visualized It wasn't a day that I didn't remind myself what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, and I proceeded forward. And even now, it gets so ingrained that you know how to package off things such that you compartmentalize things, and you learn this as a skill as you're going through the life sciences, because you will have patients that you become attached to. You hate to see the pain and suffering, but you still have to compartmentalize so that you can do your very best. And if you're not in direct patient care, there are other scenarios just as well. If you're doing, say, administrative medicine, where there are other personalities that you must compartmentalize as well and move down the road. And as I was saying, you do get better. It's like being a hurdler. Once you get the technique down, you're very good at it. And so now I'm in school once again, because it's learning how to organize, learning how to visualize, knowing what the goal is, and that's how you do it. And I think as long as you know that someone else has done this, it's not impossible. And you just keep re-visualizing over and over again. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart, for sharing, and I appreciate that. Mr. Alexander, do you want to share, or should we just go on? I don't want to be remiss in including you.
You're nice to do that. Thank you, Deborah. But I'm going to use the gratitude theme that Brian shared with us and thank him for his remarks. And I want to thank the team from IOMC as well. But I want to thank Anita Stewart for what she did at the last program. I don't know if your video captured it, but the student who was worrying about his loan package was obviously in need of stress reduction. And Anita's comments to him on how to handle that very difficult situation immediately provided him a sense of perspective and I think relief. And I want to thank you. I've shared that incident with our Sprague board and as an example of how important these sessions can be for young students, for others who are interested in careers in dentistry and in medicine. So I believe in the value of this program. I look forward to working with the IOMC team to try and build a student network and a mentoring network that will accelerate participation in the coming months. And thanks to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. I will add to that afterwards, that particular student, I connected with Aunt Martha's Health and Wellness because he was located in Rockford, and Aunt Martha's has a clinical site in Rockford. And that was part of one of his issues, was that he felt isolated, not with like people. And so the community outreach coordinator who was with Aunt Martha's is a contact of mine. So the two of them have met up a few times and are, exchanging and sharing stories and so on. So I'm appreciative that worked out, as well. And we're going to continue to do those types of things. I'll share just very briefly my own story on resilience and coping. My very first career, I was a medical technologist. I worked in hematology and oncology for over 10 years, and primarily with pediatrics patients. And after about 10 years that I had burnout, very exhausting. At that point in time, there wasn't a good recovery, and treatments and that were available. So I took a short leave, and from practicing at a hospital, and I moved on to get another degree in healthcare communications, but I still needed to work, as I often joke about, but it's true. I'm not a trust fund baby, so I still had bills to pay and, rent and mortgage and other types of bills. So I went back to school on a part-time basis. And so, Brian, I can relate to your story. It took me 6 years part-time to get another degree as an undergrad. And then after that, I finished that, then I decided I wanted to get a master's degree, which I then did also part-time. So, it takes a lot of persistence just to keep that goal in sight. And, it's not a smooth journey, but you just have to keep that dream in mind. And, and as Dr. Stewart and others have said, I call it put it in buckets. Now I'm taking care of this and now I'm taking care of that, so that no one particular area overwhelms any part of my life. And, thankfully, I enjoy some creative activities. So when things get really tense, I make sure that I go and spend 15 minutes gardening or doing something else that I like, and then come back, to whatever project that's, stressing myself out. And that's just a lifelong skill that, once you master it, you'll find, a way in order to deal with it, because stress is not going to avoid you in life. It seems to find you, but it's more how your reaction is to it overall. So I thank everyone for sharing their stories. Brian, let's introduce two questions right now to people, so that they can we can discuss that a little bit. So the first question was, I think we already covered some of that when there was a time in your life where you felt stressed and you overcame it. So since we don't have students on, let's just move on to the next question. I'll let Brian give a question on that, but before we do that, I thought it would be interesting to hear what movie or situation in your life can you name and shortly describe that involved where the actors or whoever is in your story as a whole overcame a period of stress. So what movie can you personify stress and coping? And while you think about that for a moment, I'll share with you a movie that kind of changed my life. There's a 2015 movie that came out. It's called Bridge of Spies. It's with Tom Hanks and Mark Rylance, and it was nominated for Academy Awards. And what it's about is a Russian double spy is caught. And he is then imprisoned in Russia. And he led a double life for quite a period of time. And in the end, he is freed. And he obviously crosses a bridge, that shining moment that happens at the end of the movie, and Tom Hanks, who's the attorney, JAG attorney, who then comes and negotiates his, freedom and safety. But there's throughout the movie, Mark Rylance, who plays that actor, he continually he's very calm at all times, and he is obviously in a very dreadful situation. Either he could be imprisoned on the US side, or he could be imprisoned on the Russia side, or possibly worse. And Tom Hanks continually asked him in the movie why he was not nervous, not excited, not, anxious about it. And his comment was, will it help? And from that, it was obviously the acting, but from that moment on, it always reminded me that, will me being anxious or nervous or any of the above help the situation? Most of the time, the answer is no. So what you do is, I've just thought that is a great picture in my mind all the time to see that particular character. Should I get nervous? No. Will it help? No. So just come up with a plan, implement the plan, and move forward. So does anyone else want to share a movie that they can think of that they, or even a situation that they found that someone just modeled, stress and that reaction to it well? And Brian, you may have a share.
So to be transparent, I like to go to my favorite movie, which is Friday. I don't know if anybody watched that movie Friday. It came out in the early 1990s. And basically, overall, a situation happened where a young gentleman got fired from his job. He was living at home with his parents, and his father was upset with him for getting fired. So him and his friend, his friend decided to get him involved in a situation that he shouldn't have been involved in, a local bad influencer. And then they owed that person some money. And the stress was figuring out how they were going to get the money to the bad influencer. And throughout the movie, they're under a lot of stress. They have a lot of anxiety. And at the end, the main character finds a way to then get the money to the bad influencer. And then they were able to have a good rest of their night. And that's the best way I can explain the movie. It's a little different, but I'm just being transparent. It's one of my favorite movies. But when I think about that, the main character's name is Craig. He's under a lot of stress. He just got fired. His friend tried to cheer him up with doing something that was maybe not the most appropriate. And then he put himself in a bad situation. And throughout the whole entire movie, he's trying to figure out ways to get the money to this bad influencer. He asked his parents, he asked his mom, he asked his sister. His mom said, she said, why would I give you money if you don't have a job? And he said, no, she said, why would I give you money? He said, I ain't got no job. And she said, exactly. That's why I don't want to give you any money. Because if you had a job, you would have the money. So throughout that whole movie, I love the movie because you can learn a lot of different things from the movie. One of my favorite quotes from the movie is from his father. It was a situation that they were in the bedroom together, and the main character happened to have a firearm. And his dad said, in life, sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but you live to fight another day. And that really resonates with me because every day in your life, you might lose some, you might win some, but you always got to live to fight another day. So that's my movie.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Anyone else want to share? Jeff, you're talking,
Just a
but
quick
you're
one. Oh,
okay.
On the wrong I clicked on the wrong icon. I clicked on the one on the screen. So, not a movie, but I used to run, and I learned a lot from running. First, I learned, all these people were passing me, and I learned to run my own race. And this is actually something I learned earlier. I also learned that it's not where you finish, but it's the fact that you finish. You crossed the line. Actually, we were on a field exercise with the Marines, and we were hiking back to base, and I wasn't used to hiking, and I was just bringing up the rear. But they stopped for resting. I walked through the rest area, and I got ahead of them. Then they caught up to me and passed me, but I finished. And finishing is probably the most, I've learned a long time ago, finishing is more important than winning. Seeing it through, seeing things through to the end.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Dr. Stewart?
well, one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Mm.
And my favorite quote is, when you lose your laugh, you lose your footing. And to me, it means it's all about perspective. And then when you get really into the movie, the perspective really is who is really sane and who really is not sane. So the spin I put on it is, don't lose your own joy. Always remember that it is your joy that propels you. And without that, you won't be able to go forward. In other words, you lose your footing.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Very good point. Good. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Brian, do you have any closing remarks that you want to make?
Yeah, my last remark is I want to pose the question of, have you taken a moment to stop, think, and breathe today? And it seems very simple, but throughout our life and throughout our days, we're under a lot of stress. We're doing so many things unconsciously and consciously that sometimes we don't take a moment to stop, think, and breathe. And I'm leaving this with you all because when you are under stress, or even when you're not under stress, it's always good to stop, think, and breathe and give yourself a moment of pause before you continue on in your day. So that's what I'm going to leave everyone with.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. As I said, this is being videotaped. We'll place this on the website next week, and we'll send it out to all of the students. We do have, as I said, 26 students who are signed up in the program. And so we look forward to sharing this information with them. And Brian, thank you so much for giving us the tools to be able to share with them. And thank you everyone for sharing your stories and your heartfelt encouragement as well. So have a good evening from IOMC.